Hello everyone, welcome to another video. We're going to take a look at Cisco Catalyst Center plug and play today. Basically, the idea behind this concept is if you need to turn up a new location and add devices to your network and you want to be as hands-off as possible, this would be an approach you might want to take. So in other words, you're, as a network engineer, administrator, whatever, you're remote and you have some form of smart hands on site, maybe it's an operations team member, something along those lines. They essentially unbox the equipment, rack it, turn it on, wire it, and the idea is that it will phone home and you can get a baseline configuration or full-blown configuration from start to finish without needing to touch the device at all. So I can't tell you how many people I talk to, whether it be customers, colleagues, old colleagues, friends, they still use templates like notepad config files, and they modify them on a onesie twosie basis to turn up equipment. I mean, those days are long gone. So, the more modern approach is to, do zero touch provisioning, plug and play, those types of things. So let me share my screen and we will hop into it. So we're working with a very simple topology. The only two devices we're going to be concerned about is this router up here and this Catalyst 9kv switch down here. They can communicate via this common network that sits between them. And the idea is that this router will be handing out a DHCP address to the Catalyst switch, and it's going to contain an option 43, which will point to Catalyst Center. And that's what's going to trigger the plug and play process. So if we look at Cisco's website here, if you Google Catalyst Center, DHCP, plug and play, option 43, whatever, you'll come across the configuration guide. And this is the key piece here. All you need on your DHCP server, whether it be a Windows box, a Cisco router, whatever it is to define option 43. Okay, so in this case, they're using a Cisco router as the DHCP server, which is the exact same way I'm going to demonstrate it. And they have the option 43 in here with this specific syntax, where these 4 octets signify the IP address of Catalyst Center. So if we go to my router 1 in the topology and we do show run section DHCP, we can see that I've got an exclusion range from 1 to 250. So in other words, it's only going to hand out 251 to 254 based on the network that I have defined. The default router is just the gateway. I've given it a domain name of cisco.com. And then here's the option 43. Very similar to what we just saw on Cisco's website, except the IP address in this string is the Catalyst Center in my lab environment. So that's literally all you need from a DHCP perspective. And once the switch grabs an IP address, assuming it's connected to your network and it has reachability to this DHCP server, it will begin the plug and play process. Now, before we go ahead and trigger that process, we do have some homework to do on the Catalyst Center side. So the first thing we need to do is we need to go into provision, plug and play, and we need to make sure that Catalyst Center is aware of the devices that are essentially going to be onboarding, right? If you want this to be truly hands-off, the best way to do this is to integrate your Catalyst Center with your smart account, your Cisco smart account. And what will happen is all the devices that are in your smart account will automatically be populated into your network plug and play, and you won't have to go and add these devices. In our case, since this is a lab, I'm just going to add the device manually so that it's sitting in plug and play. Now, let me grab the IP or the serial number. So that's going to be the serial number of switch 1. The product ID is C9kv-01 So those are the virtual catalysts that I'm running. And then we'll give it a name. So we'll say C9kv-01. We're going to say add device. So all this does is add it to the plug and play inventory, and you can see that nothing's been contacted, it's not claimed, right? Like nothing's been started yet. All you're doing is telling Catalyst Center that, hey, if this device with this serial number reaches out to you for plug and play, go ahead and allow it. It's okay. All right. So that's all that step does. Now the next piece we have to do is under design network settings. You have to tell Catalyst Center once the plug and play process is triggered and the switch or router, whatever it may be, reaches out. At some point, Catalyst Center is going to need to be able to make changes to that device, right? So it's going to need some kind of form of creds or something along those lines. So if we go to device credentials, we're going to assign a CLI cred. So this would be a great use for like a service account where you can define one service account that you will essentially use to have Catalyst Center configure all of the devices on the network. That's typical way to handle this, okay? So we're going to assign Catalyst Center creds. I've already predefined these, okay? So when you hit Manage Credentials up here, you can say add CLI, okay? So when you add CLI, you can say Catalyst Center, right? And then you can give it the name. I'm going to say Mogi. Password's going to be Cisco Bang23. All right. And you would save that, right? So it already tells me it exists because I've already predefined that. Okay. So I'm just going to go ahead and close that. And then what you do is once you create those creds, you select that whatever you name those creds under here. Now we need to do the same thing for SNMP. So I'm going to go ahead and just define SNMP v3. So again, I've also predefined the SNMP v3. Again, this is somewhat of a part 2 video. I'll put the link of part 1 in the description and you guys can check it out. But basically part 1 of this was just adding devices, discovering devices one by one or via a discovery scan. And, we kind of discussed V2, V3, all that good stuff. But anyway, you would do the same thing if you go to Manage Creds. You can say add SNMP v3. When you come in here, you give it a name, and then you give it the username for SNMP v3, the authentication mode, which in my case is auth and priv, and then you would give it the 2 passwords, right, and you're done. So I'll go ahead and add that to SNMP v3, and I'll hit save. Okay, so it went ahead and assigned that. Now, next thing we need to do is we need to look at CLI templates and network profiles. Okay, these two things are going to kind of go hand in hand. So if we look at network profiles, you can see that I don't have any network profiles defined. All right. So if I hover over add profile, it says which type of profile do you want to add? I'm going to go ahead and add a switching profile. All right. And we can see that we can give it a name, which we're going to do. We're going to call it, based on the topology. Again, I guess if you guys are stumble upon this video, let me just show you the network hierarchy. So we've only got one site defined. So if we expand under the US, we have New York State. We have a building called One Penn Plaza, and that building has the 9th floor, which is essentially where we want our devices to land, okay? So we only have a site. Obviously, if this was a production environment, you would have tons of locations depending on how big your environment is. So if we come back to network profiles and we say add a switching profile, okay, I'm going to call it New York City 9th floor profile, okay? And again, you call it whatever you want. In this case, I'm just calling it 9th floor profile. We're only going to be looking at onboarding for the time being. So I'm going to leave it on onboarding, okay? And I'm going to say attach template, all right? The template is the CLI template that I said goes hand in hand, okay? So I've predefined the CLI template already, and we'll go take a look at that as soon as I say add here. Okay, so you can see it went ahead and it added the onboarding template, all right? So now I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to hit save. And you can see now I have a profile, right? That is a switching template, and I can even go through and I can say assign it to a site. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's assign it to the 9th floor. So we'll save that. Okay, success. Now if we go back to CLI Templates, Catalyst Center comes with a bunch of out-of-the-box templates, which you're obviously free to use. I went ahead and created the 9th floor onboarding template, which is this one here. So if we click on it, it's very basic, okay? It goes along, again, this is a part 2 of 2 videos. So the first video, the only thing we were really doing was defining SSH access with a username and password, and then defining SNMP. So I'm basically doing the same thing here, but I'm hands off, right? Everything's happening zero touch here. So this is essentially the same thing we were doing in the previous video, but I'm having Catalyst Center do it automatically, okay? So that's what the CLI template looks like. And all you need to do is tie that to the profile. So if we come back down here, we can see that network profiles, it's attached to one, okay? And if we click that, we can see it's the profile that we just created together. That's affiliated with the 9th floor. So that all looks great. So at this point, what we're going to do is we're going to go to the switch. So if we go back to the topology, remember, we're only concerned with this first switch, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and just right erase that switch and reboot it, okay? All right, so we're going to go ahead and reload that switch. Now, obviously, this is going to take a few minutes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause the video, and as soon as this thing comes up with the initial configuration prompt, I'm going to go ahead and resume the recording. Okay, we're just about there. So, okay, so what we can see is no startup config, so it's going to start the auto install, plug and play, or zero touch provisioning. Okay, we can see, would you like to enter the initial configuration dialog? So this is clear that the switch has no configuration on it, right? It's brand new out of the box. Again, some smart hands on site racked and stacked this thing, plugged it in, and that's it, right? So what it's doing now is it's actually trying DHCP version 6, which we're not running. We're running v4. So if we give this thing another couple seconds, it should grab an IP address on the gig00 interface from the router where the scope is defined. So what we can see is it says acquired an IPv4 address. Okay, so it grabbed .251 off that interface, just like I said. We can see the domain name Cisco.com, and we can see that string where the option 43 was defined, okay? So you can see the PNP discovery connected to the server 11.101, so that's Catalyst Center, okay? So now Catalyst Center picks up the switch based on that option, and it can start to do its thing. If we go to the router, okay, we should, if we show IP DHCP binding, we can see that we have leased out an address of 252 to that device. So that's another way to kind of validate that, this server is in fact the one giving out the IP address. So we can see it's doing a bunch of stuff, right? Notice I do want to point something out. Right now it's just the switch prompt, okay, because it's still a blank config. Once we're done with this, we should see the switch prompt change, and we should, see some configuration as well. So like if I just log in and I say show run section username, for example, there's nothing there. Okay, it's still a blank switch. The only thing that's happened is Catalyst Center has essentially picked it up based on the plug and play inventory. So if we come back there, what we should now see is that device that we define with that serial number. It's in an unclaimed state, and we can see that it's connecting. Okay, so it's actually installing the certificate to ensure that the communication between Catalyst Center and the switch is there. And once it's ready, it should tell us, right, device is ready to be cleaned or something along those lines. So we'll give this another couple seconds to do that. Like I said, we can see that it's still communicating. This page will auto refresh every 30 seconds, but if you're impatient, you can refresh. So we can see it's going into an initializing phase at this point. I'll go ahead and pause this so we're not just staring at it. It's going to take a couple seconds or minutes potentially for it to completely onboard here. Oh, there it goes. I didn't have to worry about it. So at this point, right, so again, I'm remote. I have people on site doing the physical aspect of this, right? I haven't touched this switch in person. So now I come in the Catalyst Center, I can see my device is ready. So all I do is click it, I go to Actions, and I can say Clean. We can see it, device name, right, is C9kv-01. If you wanted to change this to be something else, that's fine. It obviously the serial number and the product ID are there. We're going to go ahead, we're going to assign this to the 9th floor. All right, we're going to hit next. Now, what we can see here is we're attaching that template that we defined earlier, okay, to this device. The other powerful thing that I can't necessarily demonstrate because these are virtual switches and this is a lab is you can actually do the software image management, or the SWIM, which is a powerful tool as well. You can define what you want iOS versioning to be depending on the device, and when this onboards, it will automatically upgrade to that particular version, which is awesome. Again, completely hands off from an engineering perspective. You literally just have it pick up the version you want. When that version changes, you update Catalyst Center, and anything that comes in after the fact will automatically go to that version. So we're not going to do anything with the versioning of the image. We're just going to attach the template. So we'll say next. All we do is click the device that we want. Okay, so now we've applied the template to that device. We hit next. So we can see at this point the device has been claimed. Okay, but what we're waiting on is the workflow execution. So again, this is a lab environment and it's very resource intense, so it's not the fastest thing. But what we should see here shortly is the onboarding process should start to change states. So I'll pause the recording for a second. Once this starts to update, I'll chime in. So, okay, what we see here is it was actually about 10 seconds after I took myself off video, but we can see it's onboarding, it's executing workflow. And if we go to the switch, we can see some action happening, right? So now we can start to see usernames and passwords, right? Or usernames with the privilege 15. We can see that configuration is being applied by Catalyst Center, right? Which is what we expect. Now, ultimately, what we want to see is the state to be provisioned. Okay, so there it goes. It just finished. So once this happens, okay, now that device should move itself over into inventory, which is what we want. So if we pop over to inventory, we can see that we're in the sync state. So if we give this a minute or two, we should ultimately see the switch pop into the inventory. Now, this is just a basic example of plug and play, right? What you would most likely want to do is build out your templates so that you can define your SVIs, your VLANs, your port interface configurations, right? Like you sky's the limit, right? I'm just showing you that how hands off you can be. You have gear shipped to a location. You don't need to be there to install it. You can have somebody that's less technical unbox it, rack it, power it on, and call you and say, hey, everything's been powered on. It's cabled based on the information you provided me. Go ahead and do your thing, right? And you can be completely remote, bring up an entire branch site uh, without having to touch the equipment at all. So we can see it's in the process of connecting. Now again, I'm not changing IP address information. Like at some point, you're going to want to most likely flip this over to like maybe a VLAN or change it. Right now, it's still set to grab a DHCP address, right? I'm just showing you a very basic example. But in a production environment, you'll make some tweaks to this and you'll want to take it to the next couple steps, take it to another level. But you can see it's now managed, it's reachable, and it's in the inventory, and it's been tied to the ninth floor of a site. So again, example of plug and play with Catalyst Center, all being done in a virtual environment as well, which is kind of cool. You can test your configs and templates and validate everything and go from there. So I appreciate your time. I hope this was worthwhile, and I look forward to seeing you on another video in the future. Take care.